Welcome, everybody, to Torogi Talk, where we attempt to unpack anything and everything Igorot, whether it's through story or discussion. We hope to increase the awareness of our people and hopefully inspire others to seek out a greater understanding of our culture, just as we are. So today, you got us regulars here, plus one more. Here's Wendy. Usually we would be introducing ourselves, but she did introduce herself once already, but we're gonna let her do it one more time. Obviously your name, and like your lineage, where your parents are from, in terms of the Cordilleras, and then what organization you're part of as well.
Okay, so I'm Wendy, and I'm married to Wendy Puutin Watan, and I'm married to Mark here. So we trace our roots. My dad's side is from Sagada and Bissau, and my mum's side is from Bissau. So on my mum's side, we do know that we're part of the Galilid clan, and on my dad's side, it's the Gatulan. That's how we trace. So Puutin is not is our family name, but it's linked to Gatulan from Sagada. The organisation I'm with is Igorot UK, because we're here based in London, United Kingdom.
Awesome. So I think I was just telling these guys that I've been doing some editing, and so far for this quote unquote second season, we've done four talks. Three of them being people in the diaspora, and one obviously from Dr. Shear, and obviously haven't seen it yet. But so this one isn't going to be any different. We're going to highlight Wendy again in the diaspora, and then just we can start out a little bit about. Do we cover a lot of your upbringing as an Igorot in the UK, or like when did you weren't born in UK, were you?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
you were. Okay.
Yeah.
Did we cover that a lot last time? I don't remember.
Well, the context was still around the George Floyd time, so we were talking about racism and experiences of racism in different countries, and she was here at the time when we were doing it. Right. But she didn't really go over that, so maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
let's go over it.
I was born and raised here in the UK, London specifically, a very diverse part of London, I must say. So we're in Walthamstow, which is northeast London. Hugely diverse, but diverse in the sense of a lot of Southeast Asian families here from Pakistan and India. And we also have a large African Caribbean
West Indies
folks from that came in the I think in the
Windrush
era, yeah. So Walthamstow at the time was predominant, was before my parents moved into London. It was white, it was all English white. And then in the when as the minority started to move into the UK, into London specifically, a lot of those white people moved out of Walthamstow. So the demographics of Walthamstow, it's changing now, because a lot of it's becoming more gentrified. So we're seeing that whole round circle of people coming back in.
So white people are coming back?
Yeah.
So the children of the people that moved out are coming back. But then also a lot of people from the countryside, because they want to be somewhere in between urban and kind of outside of London. So they pick Walthamstow, this area, which is just like a 20-minute train ride from central London, which is the main area where everybody hangs out.
And then, but it's also close to like countryside area. So we're close to Epping Forest, Essex, and Kent. So I mean, we pocket right in an urban / country feeling vibe.
We have access. Yeah. You have access.
But you're all still East London, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the diversity is always in the East.
Yeah, the cool thing about Walthamstow when we were there, when me and Jerk were there, was that I had this, like, even though it was still in London, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We are definitely London, East 17.
Yeah. It felt like a small town kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember like the what's it called? The tube going in.
Yeah.
It was so long. It was like one of the last stops.
Yeah.
But it's still like London, even though it was like so far away. And it's pretty cool. The little town.
But it's changed so much. Like it's actually a lot nicer, I have to say. It's way nicer. I just remember I don't know, visiting a long time ago and then having to like watch my back and be a little bit more vigilant and being like, you know, like, am I gonna get jumped?
5, 10 years. It's been a phenomenal change in like 5 or 10 years. So when Mark was visiting about 15 years ago,
it was still like that.
Bit, you know,
still kind of shady.
And then about 10 years ago, when we moved back 7 years ago. You know, that's when changes were, you know, you could really see money has come into Walthamstow. So a lot of people buying in here and then things improving. So the Olympics came and really did start to regentrify other parts of East London. And we started to get a lot of that money filter in because people with income started to move back and renovate homes. Local libraries were being invested in. Transport links were being invested in. The parks were being invested. Everything was being invested in. When you start seeing the infrastructure getting invested in, that's when you know things are turning for the better. Really, really for the better for everyone who's here.
They will.
But it's also then they push out all the hooligans and stuff because I remember there used to be a lot of hooligan like pubs out there, and all of a sudden it's like nice Italian, French restaurants and stuff like that. And the food culture, all of a sudden you guys had like Italian food all over the place.
Italian food,
French Italian,
French food. Oh, you guys are like so blessed, and even that the little town squares, all like. When we were there about 2 years ago, it was just really nice. And the bathrooms were all clean. The public bathrooms were all clean.
Yeah, it was different. It was different from the very first time.
Yeah, the very first time I remember going into like the pub and like people just like looking at us, and even like the proprietor just saying, hey, it's probably not a good idea for you to be here. And they were just thinking like, all the hooligans are probably gonna want to start a fight with you because of what you all look like. And
because we walked into a specific pub that was, I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. We walked into a place and then they kindly asked us to leave. Because they didn't want the people in there to start a fight with us. Because they ain't no police gonna help us. We're gonna have to fight them all, and try fighting drunk people. That's just not gonna work. I mean
we forget. I forget, but no, it's true. That is how it was. And
that was 2002. So
only 2002, and now things have changed to the point that it's because of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think things have just come up so much more, and there's going to be more of this discussion along racial lines here in this country, which needs to be done anyway. We're nowhere near where America is at with getting close to that, but we are getting to that. Discussions are happening, people are more aware, things have got to change, people are being aware that there is racism in the UK, there's systematic racism in the UK, not just racism, but there's systematic racism. So it's things are changing, which is
that's pretty awesome. Hey, Wendy,
really
can you tell us a little bit about how your parents ended up in the UK?
Yes.
I think it was your mom who kind of like started this whole thing. So
like everybody's mother here, I think, she was a nurse, and it was interesting because she wasn't actually a nurse yet in the Philippines. So she applied for a nursing position here in the UK. She was 17, very, very young. She applied for a nursing, so she trained in the UK, and she was educated here in nursing here in the UK. Whereas some mothers, of ours were trained and registered as nurses in the Philippines. Whereas my mum, she actually came very, very young age. I think she was 18 when she actually arrived here in the UK.
17, 16.
17, yeah, 17. Yeah, she
was young. She was
very,
18.
very young.
Yeah.
So I forget how young my mum actually was when she first arrived in the UK, and she came into for nursing, early 70s, and she she trained in general nursing at the time. And then after, I think, her general nursing, she specialized in mental health. And then that was late 70s. She went back to the Philippines to marry my dad, and then brought my dad over just 79. I think he came to the UK just after I was born. And so my parents came.
He just passed the bar too.
Yeah, so my dad had just passed the bar in the Philippine bar in the Philippines, and he came after just literally passing it. He was a police officer, a detective, and then he went to night school for law. But he left that to come to the UK to be with my mum and to raise me.
To take care of this one right here.
Of course. And but he always said that the UK was never. It was only to raise us as kids. He always said that he was always going back to the Philippines once we finished school and we got married. Those were the two provisions that he had in his mind. So lo and behold, as soon as my sister Ingrid got married to Albert, that was it. He was gone. He checked out. He was out of here, and he's been happy.
Good thing you guys got married younger, because then that would be a long wait, right?
It would have been a way long wait. I mean, he pretty much checked out very, very quickly, actually. And then now, so he's been happily retired since 2009 when Ingrid got married.
Well, he's still involved.
They're still involved in the business. They're not retired in the sense that they just
we can't make any decision without passing through obviously the originals, the OGs, the bosses, right? So they're still heavily involved. They're heavily involved. So like even though he's technically retired, he still comes back for every now and then. He
was just here actually about 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing is, when my dad came, so my mum she had a profession here, so she was a nurse. But my dad, coming from the Philippines as being a lawyer, he came to the UK, and first of all, his education wasn't recognized because the Philippines, they didn't have a reciprocal relationship. So my dad couldn't get a job as a lawyer, as any professional. They never even recognized his university qualifications. So my dad took a job as a kitchen hand in Pizza Hut. So my dad worked as the bus boy. He worked his way up to become manager of Pizza Hut, and then became the area manager of pizza. So he managed a few stores. He was then poached by the competitor at the time, which was a company called Deep Pan Pizza, all pizza. And he managed some stores in central London under Deep Pan Pizza. And then in the late 80s, he decided that wasn't enough, working for somebody else wasn't enough. And his dream was always to work for himself. So he opened his own pizza store, his own pizza restaurant, late 80s. But it was really rough time because he opened it, and then there was a massive recession in the UK. So we didn't have the pizza restaurant for very, very long. It didn't do so well. We started out really, really well, and then just the market just tanked.
The timing for pizza at that time, it wasn't like now. Like everybody goes out to eat pizza over here. But back then it was still kind of, I don't know. It was just really kind of it
was new
and foreign.
It's very foreign because remember, English people, all they ate was fish and chips,
potatoes, steak, the roast.
Not even that. Yes, roasts and
Yeah.
The most exotic thing that shepherd's pie. The most exotic thing that they would eat, they would accept, is Indian food, curry. But Italian food was still foreign. Spanish, European food is still foreign.
Even though it's next door, they just keep it there. Because it wasn't like, So, but you're missing the part about your dad. Her dad actually, when he moved up from the ground up in Pizza Hut, he actually helped because they did, apparently the American Pizza Hut didn't share recipes with UK Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
So when they were making the deep dish, like thick crust pizza,
they didn't give them.
the recipe.
So my dad worked with with another couple of people in Pizza Hut to create They figured out what it made to make it go thick, and
they engineered their own.
They reverse engineered. They reverse engineered the deep pan. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that story of the guy, the Filipino guy who created all the value meals in McDonald's. Nobody knew it was created by a Filipino.
Really?
Yeah, the value meal was created by a Filipino. Because the people kept on asking, hey, what if I mix and match that? And he got sick of them asking it. there's a better story, but I'm just kind of shortening it. But in the end, he created. It was mainly I think in the San Francisco Bay Area. He created the value meals, and before it was only regional at that time. And McDonald's recognized, hey, how come the sales just in this area are all moving up? And it was because he created the value meal.
Wow.
But so in Wendy's dad's case, he helps like
in Pizza Hut.
Yeah, he helped Pizza Hut engineer the UK version of the deep pan thick crust. So if you ever go over here and you eat the deep pan, you should remember her dad. There's a connection to that, right? I think that's a pretty cool story because like
that is a cool story.
Yeah. It is.
So they call it the Putin special then.
They should.
Well, our restaurant at the time was Rich Pan Pizza. So there was Pizza Hut, there was Deep Pan, and then my dad had Rich Pan. But,
wow.
Yeah. It was fun. I mean, it was it was tough. I mean, but it was fun. That was my. That was
her childhood.
That was my childhood in that restaurant.
Working
every weekend.
Were you running the cash register then?
Yeah, I did cash register. I did cleaning. Yeah. I did sue stuff.
How old were you when you started?
I think 10 years old. I know it's ridiculous now. I mean,
have Penny do that. Have Penny do that.
Oh,
Penny.
I tell Penny every day. You have got.
I don't believe it.
Idea.
Penny is our daughter, by the way.
Our 10-year-old daughter have no freaking clue what I used to do and what I'm asking you to do to make me a cup of tea, and you have that attitude. You must be.
No, our daughter is a good kid. It's just that there's those little things as for every parent, but like
because you progressed,
Yeah, Wendy was working hard at age 9. She was like the hostess and helping her dad with marketing and along with some of her cousins too.
It's real family business.
It was
real family business, and then that we grew up with that.
Man, so we could have made a sitcom of you guys and call it like instead of Bob's Burgers.
Or Kim's Convenience, it'd be Putin's Pizza.
Yeah, Putin Pizza. Yeah,
Putin Pizza.
We could make a whole sitcom about it. I bet you could have.
Yeah.
If we were writers,
you would
like and just listen to the dialogue.
Oh my
we
god,
would just had all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, where's Arnold? Is Arnold on the feed, man?
He's on the.
Exactly. We could write a good story here for Hollywood. It would be the Kim's Convenience with the Filipino version, like starting up in the UK. I mean, that's right.
Not just Filipino, but Igorot.
Yeah, straight
up.
Man.
Yeah.
Straight up.
We'd have all these like Igorot conundrums in there too,
and
like
that nobody would understand.
Yeah, exactly. But you'd have to get really.
We'll have a whole episode based on like someone bringing a bolol in there. Like, why are you putting that? Why are you creating a rice granny right there?
But yeah, from the stories I hear from all her cousins and stuff, man, Wendy used to like work. I mean, for a 9-year-old, like she did a lot of work.
I worked, man.
And what about when did you guys? Am I jumping if I talk about the janitorial business?
Yeah, so no, we used to clean as well. So we had the restaurant and it wasn't doing so well because it was tanking. The economy was tanking. So we had to make ends meet.
This is Thatcher's time, huh?
We ended up doing cleaning jobs. We had cleaning jobs at night. So we do this restaurant during the day. And then after we shut shop, we used to go and clean offices on the way home. So we would be out there for another 3 hours cleaning, It was hard, but I mean, I remember it was fun. I mean, when I was a kid, I was just following my dad around and just doing what he said and just, having to make sure that he didn't get mad at stuff. So just did stuff real quick to make him not get mad and get stressed. It's quite.
How come our kids don't do that?
I know. I just remember always like figuring out how to like. When we used to go clean, for example,
how not to make your dad mad?
Yeah, how to not make him mad, because when you get pissed, it'd be so like, oh, he would never, my dad would never, I mean, that's one thing, he never like, because we were girls, I suppose, he never hit us, he never raised his hand to us, but he would be really, really stressed. And his stress and his aggression would always be like, he'd just have this temper, not at the kids, not at us, but at my, parents. They would fight a lot. You could just tell he was really, really, as a young kid, I could tell that they were both very, very stressed out. So I had to figure out a way to try and make them not be so stressed out by just doing stuff that would help.
Very advanced of you.
Yeah, the perfect kid.
I was just concerned with my next PlayStation game.
Yeah, I think Wendy had to grow up a little fast, you know.
I remember having to clean as well too. We had to do that here as well.
Yeah,
that was
when
the
we
worst.
just migrated.
Okay,
So your dad hustled. He really hustled. Now, can you speak a little bit about that? Because sometimes, you know how like us Filipinos, we have this crab mentality thing, and so we look at people and say who hustle and who kind of like make their way in life, and sometimes we have that. Our people have that jealousy streak going on. Like they look at them and it's like, look at those people. They're acting like this. Who do they think they are? Kind of nonsense, right? But we know that your dad hustled. And he always tried to figure out what do you think where do you think that comes from?
The hustling is hard work, isn't it? That's the value of hard work, and that's the value of for Igorots particularly, we live within our means. We don't try and, you know, live outside of what we have. I think his hustling was really the product of him and my mum. You know, both of them were hustling. So my mum was also doing 2 jobs as well. So she was helping in the rest 3 jobs. She helped in the restaurant. She had her day job in the hospital, and then she also had her side job, which was the care home, which she had developed. So
apparently that was illegal back then.
Yeah, I mean, back then you could have
moonlight.
You could moonlight legitimately.
You could moonlight?
You could, because I mean there was no regulation in terms of.
Oh, it was only later that.
It was only when the care homes got regulated.
Oh, okay.
That's when they said, you know, they couldn't. You couldn't be having multiple jobs at that point. But that came very, very late. I mean, my parents started the care home in the 80s. Same with the restaurant. They started in the 80s with little regulation at the time, so they could do. They were very lucky actually to be able to do all the things that they did, and figure out which ones worked. But both of them hustling is both of their hard work, and that is a value that Igorots particularly, wherever they go, you can see it in all Igorot families, wherever we go.
I'd say in particular, especially for that generation, I think there was no options but to hustle. And I think in that generation, that was the mentality. And that I would say grit. I would say, that grit.
Resilience.
Helped them move into different areas, like all over the world. And in their case, in the UK, and to deal with all the hardship and the racism, and just to kind of like.
They had no option to.
Yeah, there was no options. You got to put the blinders on.
Yeah, you just ignore. You just have to ignore.
And they didn't dwell on their stuff like, like life should be like this.
They're so racist. I can't do anything. No, they just carry. You know, in spite of all of that, they just carried on. They persevered, and they just ignored. As hurtful as it could have been. I mean, I can't even imagine for me, for us, having to deal with all of that, just on the new frontier, somewhere new. Just dealing with all of that social stuff. But no, they just,
especially for her dad, like her dad.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like after passing the bar in the Philippines, that's a
huge thing.
That's a huge accomplishment, and in some ways, that accomplishment, you know, it's supposed to bring you up in terms of like, I guess you can say social mobility.
Their status in that.
But like, like accomplishment to be able to move further than where you were before, right, in the Philippines. But then
it's clearly competency too. I mean,
it's very competent.
Do that. That's there's a clear competency in that.
Right. And to come here and then to kind of like be told that no, none of the stuff that you learn means zilch, you know. That's that.
Yeah, he struggled with that, my dad, I think, and that's where his frustration was, and that's where a lot of his hurt was. But he didn't. He couldn't let it be an option to not let him do work. He had to just find an avenue in, and he never stopped at where he was at. He always looked at the next level, the next get, I suppose. He just kept moving up.
How was it like growing up during the Thatcher years?
Ooh. You know, it's interesting because my mum is a Thatcherite, because she says, you know, if it wasn't for Thatcher, we would never have these houses. Thatcher, she says, is the woman that allowed me as a woman to have all these houses. And so my mum and dad, they've got quite a few properties here, because it was at that time when, you know, the markets were open and
things are becoming more privatized.
everything was privatized. Yeah, privatized at the time. Yeah, it was starting to privatize at that time. So, you know, they benefited from that part of the era.
Yeah, they were able to create the care home because of that.
Yeah. But obviously, you know, the downside to that was
for the overall economy.
For the economy, it tanked. For lots of industries folded. Yeah, the NHS.
Do you remember?
That's when you started to see privatization of that too.
Yeah. Do you remember any of like the social unrest with the unemployment and everything?
Not. I remember news reports, but nothing in Walthamstow. You know, we were kind of a bit isolated in Walthamstow, I suppose. But we saw a lot on the news, the rioting, the unrest there. The only thing I saw in Walthamstow at the time was probably a lot of people that I went to school with who, I suppose, didn't have. You know, they were living in social housing. They weren't, you know, the same like us homeowners. And you could see, looking back now, how some of those children did struggle in terms of like, they had to have free school dinners, for example. We knew that then, you know, that's when we could see the difference, that there were some kids that were struggling, families that were struggling as opposed to others who weren't.
Do you remember the Falkland War?
The Falkland War? No,
that
was 82. That was the early 80s. Yeah, no, that I was probably about 4 years old at the time.
Do you remember where Maradona scored those 2 goals?
The hand of God.
With the hand of God.
I do remember my dad watching the World Cup.
Really?
At the time, yeah. But, you know, I never, I didn't get it, you know. I just remember everybody hated Argentina. Like, everyone hated Argentina. So they were like the baddies, you know, Maradona was a baddie, you know, it was all demonized on the news, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, our news is you know, doesn't hold back. Man. Our news is awful, you know.
Speaking of news, so I've been watching The Crown.
Oh.
And so I'm on season 4 about Diana.
Oh yeah.
What do you remember from that time?
From which time? With Diana?
With Diana and everything, yeah.
Exactly. So I don't remember Thatcher and the Falklands, but anything after that I do remember. So now all of this with Diana, Camilla, Thatcher now, the Thatcher that moved, that was then let go of her cabinet. I remember all of that. And that was at a time when we had that. We went into recession in my dad had the restaurant 88. We went into recession 1990, I think, just when she resigned.
She was forced to resign.
Yeah, she was forced to resign at that time. So I remember strongly all of that. And it was a tough time in the 90s because, you know, as a business owner who failed, you know, you felt it the most. You did. Yeah.
Sorry, go back to your parents. I don't know if I missed it, but why the UK? Why England?
Because my mum, she answered the ad. She answered there were ads for Canada, Australia, and the UK. She was looking to go abroad. She wanted to study as a nurse. She wanted to be a nurse, so she was going to do it in the Philippines. But at the time, there were all these offers coming in for nursing in Canada, to train as a nurse in Canada, to train as a nurse in Australia, to train as a nurse in the UK. And she would have chosen any one of those. She said it wasn't like, oh, she had to come to the UK. It just so happened that the UK application one came up before everyone else's, so she took it. She just went with.
So it was meant to be.
Meant to be. She just took the first one that came up. You know, she wasn't. She
so
was ready
to
go.
Was it just her, or like a group of her and her friends?
No, it's just her.
Oh, it was just her.
She made friends, her friends, when she came to the UK.
Yeah, that's what you mean.
She never came with a group of friends from the Philippines. No, she was on her own. My mom was.
But they did create a community of Filipinos who were here.
Yeah. Once they
got here.
So she traveled with some Filipinos, and then that same Filipino group she stayed with as soon as they arrived, and they became lifelong friends. They've been lifelong friends ever since.
Are they Igorot as well, or just?
No, they're not actually. They're non-Igorot. There were a few Igorots that then she met once she was here, in the nursing school when she specialized actually as a mental health nurse.
Which school did you go to then?
It was through a
hospital?
Not a hospital. So it was Cane Hill Hospital. It was Cane Hill Hospital, which had a mental health department. And then she went from there to Claybury, the mental health hospital. It was a massive hospital.
Wow.
But yeah, she came through Cane Hill Hospital. It's not. I don't think it's there anymore. I think it's been absolved. But it was in South London. She arrived into South London.
Are there still opportunities like that for Filipino nurses in the UK? I'm just curious because
yes,
I mean,
so not particularly trained. Like they're taking nurses that are already trained now. So my cousin has just literally arrived the other day. She's a trained nurse in the Philippines that they've just taken a whole bunch of nurses, but they're taking all the best nurses now. They don't need the trainee nurses anymore. Yeah. They're taking the best of the Philippines and shipping them over here to the UK to work as nurses here. So it's still happening. And once they're here as nurses, then they can move up. They're given opportunities to train up to,
Yeah, they usually come with a contract and they do like, I don't know, a year or two, something like that in one hospital. And then they can move anywhere they want.
Yeah.
So they recognize they recognize the education like outright?
Oh yeah. Wow. Now it's completely different. I mean,
it'd be different if you came in if you're coming to be a doctor, though.
no, even I think. So Raymond, a good friend of ours who's lodging with us at the moment, he's a master's student in political science in the Philippines. He's now doing, he was a bachelor's there, and then he's now doing his master's here in the University of London, SOAS. They recognize his.
They do.
They recognize.
Wow. Times are changing, people.
Times are changing. Yeah, actually. They recognize the education of the,
But in the old days, they wouldn't have.
Oh, no.
I mean, even in some areas in the States, I don't think it's every state, but a lot of folks who are doctors in the Philippines, they just become nurses because it's just an easier pathway. Because if you come in and try to come in as a doctor, you have to go through a bunch of training again. That's like, why am I going backwards and then having to do like rounds again? You know what I mean? And so most of them just forget it. I'll just do the because they have like nursing courses, quick short courses for doctors to become nurses, so they can go to other areas like Canada and the States.
Well, especially California. California has
especially
really stringent kind of standards.
Wendy's auntie, her dad's sister, did that exact thing. And
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And the daughters did the same thing too. She's a doctor, and did the same thing, and she became a doctor. But then to come to America, became a nurse.
Became a nurse. Yeah.
So
it's weird.
It's just an easier pathway. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that in the UK that they're opening. Being more open to the education in the Philippines.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, the education.
Well, they've recognized all of those nurses. They recognize all their qualifications.
So it only makes sense to recognize the doctors then.
Yeah, I don't know. Next.
We'll see. You might want to Google that a little bit more to find out what's going on.
Even here, it's changing a bit, and yearly it's changing. So I'm really not up to date, but it's definitely a little bit easier. And they recognize, I don't know if completely outright, but more of your education, and then you go through some what do you call it? They assess your skills as well. So depending on that, you either have to take a little bit more, you have to retake the whole thing, or sometimes you can just challenge. Again, I've heard you can just challenge the exam and that's it. In terms of like lawyers, actually, Audrey's cousin, he was able to successfully, I don't know the full story, but I think he was able to challenge the bar here, and now he lives in like Toronto and working as a lawyer. So
that's amazing.
Different times, right? Different
times. That's amazing. Yeah. Oh yeah, now people can assess.
That's great though. It's good.
Well, it's also like speaks to the shortage of like the talent pool in these areas, because if I was just reading just a bunch of stuff that came out maybe about 2 to 3 years ago. Just the doctor shortage that will happen within the next like 10 years.
What?
Because
we're already short. I don't know.
Yeah,
We've been short too. We're short.
Well,
Everyone.
just because people are discouraged, one, because it costs a ghastly amount of money. Like, you know, why would you want to do that and still owe like, you know, $300,000 and then have to deal with like someone suing you for malpractice?
Yeah.
So it, you know, but especially the debt, the student loan debt is just not attractive to a lot of people. So you get someone from another country who doesn't have that student loan debt because their country paid for that. That's or someone paid for it, but
somebody
it didn't cost like the same like that. You're getting someone who definitely has a competency, you know, to do the job well. And in fact, if they get chosen over here, likely they're gonna do it super well because, you know, they got to prove themselves. So there's always that talk about like you want to. It was always good to get like a Filipino, especially a Filipino doctor, because you know that they're probably the best of the best to even make it here in America. You know, and they're probably usually the top student of something.
Of the bowl in the Philippines, yeah.
Yeah, of the whole thing over there. And so
I was gonna say, like, my cousin back in the 90s, when he moved to New York, he was already a doctor in the Philippines, but he had to, you know, downgrade. He became a nurse and whatnot, and
exactly
since that time he's been trying to get back to like a doctor status or whatever. He's back in the Philippines now being a doctor, but that's because he had to get deported. But yeah, there's that thing where when you come from the Philippines or whatever, and you basically have to, they don't really recognize your profession. But even for like engineers,
engineers too,
yeah, that's right. You know, like Filipino engineers, like especially in the 60s in America, I know in America they were pulled. A lot of Filipino engineers were pulled over in the late 60s, and then like all of a sudden they slowed it down in the 70s, late 70s and 80s, and I don't know why, but
maybe because they had engineers already in the host country. Maybe they already had them.
We're all engineers. Saudi.
I think the philosophy was because there was a shortage. They did want to just rely on foreign professionals, and so
once they had enough.
Yeah, up to 10 years ago, I think like they still favored like native borns who were engineers rather than those
from abroad.
Like from abroad that have more than 5 years. So even though my dad was like an engineer for like a long time, people like a lot of new engineers that just graduated, they would still be favored technically. They'd still require them to have at least 5 years of experience. But if they have 5 years of experience versus my dad, they would probably choose the younger engineer, because my dad had to like do it over again. He had to like go to school.
He had to go back and do everything. But he must have gotten like the best grades because it was too easy for him.
He's old, right? So he knows everything now.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm curious also to find out about that entrepreneurial way of your parents, because obviously they were hustling, but they also have deep knowledge about and confidence about starting their own business. And that's one of the things that like a lot of our people don't. I mean, we work in professions, but don't necessarily go into starting your own business. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, what about that process for your parents?
Oh gosh, I think it's, you know, both of them, looking at them both, are both good leaders in terms of their own family dynamics. So my mum was the oldest. She wasn't the oldest child, but she was the oldest girl. So she was the second oldest. And my dad was the oldest in his family. So I think they both had a confidence level, because where they, you know, they were born leaders, I suppose, just because of by virtue of their birth, you know, how they were born. Because of that, they were given a lot more responsibility earlier, so they were able to, I guess, organize themselves or know a kind, you know, mimic, you know, pattern themselves off their parents before them. So my mom's parents, my grandfather, my grandmother are really the business entrepreneur, where my mom really takes off, because my grandparents, my mom's side of the family, they owned properties. They owned a lot of properties in Baguio, boarding houses and businesses. So I could see where my mom took that direct line. My dad, on the other hand, his family were educators. So his grandfather was a teacher. No, was a mayor of Sagada. His parents were teachers. His grandfather on his mother's side was also a community leader, like a strong community. So, you know, my dad and my parents, so my mom and dad, they were, you know, they had very good they took those good role models to take them in. And then both of them, while they were both, you know, so my dad was a police officer, my mom was a nurse. They good at following rules, you know, they will follow the rules. But then there was both of them too are quite good risk takers, I think. So they took risks. My mom took a risk to come to the UK. My dad took a risk to follow her. My dad took a risk to start a business, you know, without having had a business before, you know. My mom, having had business in her life, she took a risk to take multiple loans. I mean, they have that element of risk taking. I think some people, I don't think it's specific to Igorots or anyone, but I mean, they'll stop there because they don't want to take that next step. But I think a lot of that risk taking is also grounded in their faith. So they're both very spiritual too. My dad's very spiritual, that he believes in the old rituals. Yeah. Both of them did. You know, they were married through Dawak, through prayers. They believed that all of that had bound them together, had created the good fortune for them both. That, you know, despite, you know, whatever challenges they've had, that Dawak, those rituals, those prayers that were done at their wedding has kept them strong and kept them successful. They believe that.
And, you know, one of the things when talking to my mother-in-law, that's really interesting, because I just asked her thoughts and, like, you know, about the Christian side of everything. And you know, to them, there is no difference. So, like, their faith in terms of, like, you know, the rituals from our culture are totally compatible with the Christian faith, because it's all prayer. It's all prayer to God. And they feel like, hey, you know, if we can do it through our own filter, our own culture, and at the same time do it through the larger picture of the Christian body, that, you know, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong.
There's nothing wrong with having a stronger power of prayer to support you in taking those risks, because you know, you got to feel a little bit of that. You know, you got to go with your gut, but at the same time, you got to have the faith to support it. If you have no faith foundation or anything in terms of, like, it's not just being Christian, but some type of sense of prayer of this greater mystery of the universe, and bowing down to that in a sense, then how can you be humble enough to accept and receive the gifts that the universe can give you? So those things were a big deal to them.
Definitely.
And
growing up, we always did before they did. You know, we always tried. You know, they brought us back to the Philippines. When we went back to the Philippines, they did massive rituals when we went back. Week-long rituals. The whole time we were there was always a ritual. They were doing some butchering
every time we go back,
cleansing, to do something, to give back, to give thanks, to do. Always connected. And here in the UK, whenever anyone was feeling sick, my dad would do a ritual. My dad would do a ritual when he had to do, you know, we had an exam, or he had to go to, you know,
even the naming of the babies. There's a baby naming rituals.
Every life cycle that we've experienced here in the UK, my dad never stopped doing the rituals here. Never.
Can you share a little bit about the naming? Because
The Gob Gob Bao.
I think that that's one of the things that when people are talking about like, hey, how can I return, reclaim some of the stuff that we lose? One of the interesting things is actually having an Igorot name, which you have, and your sister do, and now your children do. Our names really come from, like my name, it comes from like my ancestors, but the closest thing that I have for an Igorot name is what my parents called me, Pajing Jing, you know, and that was it. You know, and then you ask them what it means. Oh, because it sounds good.
It means cute, cute. That's what Pajing Jing means.
And I was a cute kid, I think, when I was so that's
little round
true.
head, little baby Yoda.
Yeah, little round head, and just probably really cute.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that in terms of like what people are looking at, not just like, I mean, people look at the exterior stuff, hey, dancing and wearing the Igorot swag, tattoo, but there's something about the name that I think that we
there's power in the name.
There's something about the name that I think that if we really want to look at like some authenticity, maybe we should pay attention to that.
Yeah, Auntie Caridad Fiarod, she passed away a while back, but she was one of the educators in Mountain Province. And one of the stories she told us, and she really believed in it, because there was like one of the children went through the Gob Gob Bao process, which is the naming, and she felt that baby, like I think it's an unfortunate case, but I think the driver somehow drove off the cliff in one of the jitneys. And the only person to survive was that baby
who had just had the
Gob Gob Bao.
Well, he didn't have it, but he had it a few years ago.
Yeah,
he was the only one of surviving.
It was actually, he was a little boy. It wasn't a baby by that time. But then he had went through the process, and the process isn't really long. It's just an intentional prayer, and usually like the name at least in our family, the names that have been chosen are ones that belong to, especially in Wendy's dad's side of the family. They pick an ancestor's name from that side of the family, so that the ancestor won't be forgotten, and that
the child will take
good
characteristics of that
ancestor. And they feel that there's a protection that comes along with it too.
Definitely.
So like Auntie Caridad, what she was telling us that story, I was like, yeah, could you imagine that? Yeah, and we believe it's because of the Gob Gob Bao that he was protected, because nobody does it. We've been telling everybody you should do the Gob Gob Bao, and nobody wants to listen to us. But this boy had the Gob Gob Bao done, and he was the only one saved. So you tell me, the ancestors were watching him.
That's true.
And God rest her soul. I thought that was I really appreciated that story that she told us. And I don't remember the boy's name, but
there's a protection to it.
Yeah. So they feel that there's a protection to it.
That the child will be protected.
Protected because you're respecting the ancestors, and you respect the ancestors. You call on the ancestors to be with you. They'll be with you. So that's the concept behind that.
So to jump on that, what are you guys' opinions, or what are your parents' opinions? What could their opinions be on regards to so for my parents, like they're very Christian, and in my view, they kind of denounce a lot of the old rituals and whatnot. Anytime I talk to them about it, they're like, those are just the old ways or whatever. What are you guys' opinions on that when it comes to modern Igorots and their Christian values? Look at that and say that those are just pagan rituals and whatnot.
No. So a lot of our family members actually don't. So in my mum's side and my dad's side, my mum's side, I think they're not as.
Originally,
my mum is really the one, I suppose, who's very much who very staunch believer in it, and then a lot of her family.
It's because she's witnessed the blessings. That's the reason why, But because they grew up in the city, like her mom's side of the family, but her mom married Mr. Igorot, right?
She couldn't escape.
She couldn't escape that.
The rituals. They were just on her.
Because her dad was very intent on he was really appreciated the old rituals and the old men and the old women that did all the traditional stuff. And he was always with them trying to learn.
Yeah.
And I think one of his goals was to learn and become one of them, because in our culture, that is what you want. That is one of the things you want to attain, is to be able to gain wisdom of the ancestors and your elders. I mean,
so I think that's the reason why they particularly did the rituals, because they'd witnessed them. They'd seen they'd seen them done. I suppose if you haven't seen it happen, or if you haven't been, because remember the Philippines at the time had changed as well. It was becoming very, very modernized. So a lot of like my aunts and uncles, they didn't witness a lot of the rituals. My dad had, because he was in the province still. My mom was in the city, so she only became exposed to it because her dad was also my grandfather was very keen on making sure that rituals were done every time he had there was a life cycle event. He made sure that he went back to the province, brought his family members to the city and do those rituals. So that's how my mum was exposed. But others, like other family members weren't. So they didn't really apply.
And you can't blame them.
You can't blame them because they never had.
It's just the nature of growing up in the city and
modernization,
the prioritization. And the modernization
and it
draws
money.
You somewhere else. It costs money.
It costs a lot of money
because you've got to sacrifice a lot of animals.
And you've got to take time out from work. Because these rituals, they go on for days. They're not like 30 minutes. Go to the church and then do it for an hour and get out. These are days. This takes freaking weeks. Some of this stuff, and you have to wait for the old people to tell you when you can leave. You have to wait for the old people to tell you when you can start butchering. You can wait and they're waiting for the sun and the moon and
they're waiting for the omens.
All these signs, and it frustrates a lot of people. So that's why a lot of people, they were like, you know what? We don't need that. We've got church. We've moved on. We should move forward. We shouldn't, and we're not to judge any of that. That is, it's just my parents were very much into the other side of that, so that's why we've been exposed to it. So that's how I know it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known this.
I think that there's a lot of value in like at least understanding. I mean, even if you don't want to practice the old traditions, at least because it is a part of your ancestry, like to at least try to find out about them. And it's also going to be dependent on who's doing them around you when you go back to the Philippines. For us Igorots from the diaspora, like if you don't have anybody around you who's actually doing it, of course it's going to be more challenging. But I think there's still a lot of the old folks left who still get called upon to do some of these rituals. Sometimes you have to kind of like poke your head in a little bit and see what's going on, especially if you understand the language. God, one of the toughest things during our Dawak, we did our Dawak back in 2004, and we went through the whole ritual as well. And I think I've mentioned this in other podcasts. And of course, it was a little bit modified because there was, like, for example, there was supposed to be this thing where I'm supposed to go and hunt and gather firewood, but we're in Baguio, so there's no time, and time is limited and all this stuff, and so like we just did a modified ritual in terms of that. But there are other things like fasting.
What did you do? Did you go like to the KFC then and just get some?
No.
What did you hunt?
The main thing was to come back with firewood.
So they had firewood.
To come back with firewood.
Oh, that's cool.
So we did the whole process while to go out of the gates where we were, the enclosure, because where you're at, the enclosure, that's your space, your ritual space. So you have to go out. They get the firewood, and then you come back in, and then you come back and you sit with the old folks, and then they say the rituals. But getting back to my point in terms of the language, the hardest part, when we originally did it, we were supposed to have a translator there with us, which was one of the aunties, but that never really happened because everything was moving, even though like we were probably hungry as hell because we were fasting. But there was just, everything went really fast, and even though it was a long ritual. So like, there was supposed to be somebody with us, but then they were probably busy too. Yeah. So half the time we were there, you can understand bits and pieces and stuff, and especially if you can understand like Kankanai or a little, if you understand some Ilocano, then you can kind of hear it mixed sometimes, but they're mainly speaking like the main dialect. So that was a little bit challenging, but still exposure to it is really important, because the nice thing is that back home in the Philippines, they really are bringing back at least a lot of the festivals and the main festivals during harvest time and planting seasons around. They're bringing back and celebrating. They're also, everybody's celebrating them. But if you want to know about the prayers and rituals, then you have to. I mean, there's academia you can research, but if you want to learn from the old folks, you have to kind of find a way to get exposed.
So before we flesh out, I kind of want to flesh out the Dawak a little bit more, since you two are both here. But before we get into that, it's a Gob Gob Bao is the name.
Gob Gob Bao. Gob Gob Bao.
Gob Gob.
Gob Gob Bao.
Okay. Are you able to?
Like baptism.
Oh, okay. Are you able to lay out the actual process, exact process of what?
It's like Dad would just
happens.
It's very simple.
Yeah,
you're in the room.
You have to close. You have to guard any of the openings where people can come in and out. There has to be somebody guarding, because during ritual you don't want people walking in and out, apparently. So during this ritual at least, and go on.
And then Dad will take. He would have butchered already chicken.
Check the gallbladder.
He does the prayers over that, the meat, and then passes it out to the elders that are there. He would have called people in already to be witness to it. And then at that point, as he's saying the ritual, that's when he's deciding the name for the child, and he's just praying over the baby, and then he hands the baby over to the parents, and then what does he do with the meat? Then
we hand it out to everybody else.
It's shared, right?
And then you're supposed to have some alcohol too. There's always alcohol. The alcohol is the amen to all the prayers.
It's very simple. It was a very, very simple.
I'm sure there's a little bit longer in the Philippines, because they can do more sacrificing and stuff.
Yeah, because that's the meat.
Let me not say sacrificing, butchering. Yeah, butchering.
I think in the Philippines you would have done more.
You do a little bit more, and the prayer is a little bit longer, and you do it with a group of old men. Yeah. In this case, we did it because my dad is now one of those old men, my father-in-law. So we just did it with him. But in the Philippines, you do it with a bunch of the elders, maybe some of the old women too.
Yeah.
Then they would add their prayers in as well.
He called all the old, my mom's brothers and sisters and whoever he could.
Yeah, as many of the older folks that he could get in the room
here to be there, to be witness to it.
Yeah, and so I think every kid has gone through
and the rituals are really about witness. A community accountability. Witnessing is very important, to have everyone there from all sides of the family, the older people there to witness everything that's been done, so that they know and they can say the story, they can carry it forward and say, yeah, that's what happened. This is when it happened.
Yes. The prayer though, that would be the one. Unfortunately, we can't decipher
that, because it's all in Igorot.
Yeah, it's all in Igorot. Our dad will kind of explain it, but let's say he says a prayer for 30 minutes. Then when we ask him to explain it, he'll say it in 2 sentences.
It's just a blessing. It's just a blessing.
And it's
it's just the blessing for the baby. That's all.
Yeah, part of it is he doesn't want to go through the stress of trying to translate it. You know what I mean? Because there is a process. You have to kind of think back and that means.
But he's in most of the prayers though. He's always reciting the story of the ancestors, like from Lumawig. Starts from Kabunyan to Lumawig, where he went, speaking to this person, to that person,
the journey,
to this person, his journey. Then it went down. Then it went to Galulad. So my children's name, my Igorot name is from the Galulad clan, and then my daughters now.
That's interesting.
Also Galulad.
That follows a pattern that looks like, because you think that this is probably happening in other cultures too.
Sure.
And it follows, like Christian baptism has a whole naming thing. we just don't pay attention to it because we don't, but as much. But it's all said in there because you go through the story of salvation history and all of this thing, and you make all of these like promises, and
it's probably
you
more
think
in the
about
Orthodox Church, right?
They do it even more so probably in the Orthodox Church, because you could kind of see it, and it happens in triplicate. And it's very dramatic in the Orthodox Church when there's a like baptism in Orthodox Church.
Oh yeah,
like
man.
3 hours or so. It's long.
Yeah.
But there's a process in that. But there's also the intention of naming, and this happens in Jewish traditions too. So you think about it, it happens likely in other traditions, but we don't think about it as much because we've separated ourselves with the value of naming. Oh, we just look in a book now, or we come up with names like, what let me combine my name with your name, and that's your
I'd
name.
say that most people are trying to find meaning in the name, though.
Yeah, but I think it's different. I don't think we put that like whole thing. I think it's interesting when you name that whole history, that the whole history of your people in that. I think that's kind of interesting.
And you know what's cool about that story when they tell it? I've definitely heard it. It's even super longer when they did Bless a House. So like the Mawig, the story goes is like he goes from like every town, and then they talk about how he met everyone, like certain people of your like certain members of your family in one area. And then he walks to another area, and like I've listened to like memory techniques, and this is how our ancestors used to remember everybody, even though the people didn't have last names, because you could like apparently memory works through connection. And so one of the memory techniques that I was taught was to kind of you want to remember certain things, but like compartmentalize them. Like say, for example, you use your house, and you can compartmentalize things in your bedroom, visualization, right? Compartmentalize things in the living room, the kitchen, and you put things you want to remember in different areas in your mind. Well, the old folks were already doing this in their oral stories. So like Lamawig was going from area to area, meeting your different ancestors, and then they talk about the story of like when he met and and it's like, wow,
that is a memory technique.
Yeah,
and
that's a memory technique.
Why that oral story has carried on and it's remembered.
I'd say that the Ifugao people are very good at this, though. They have been more from my observation. I know some people from our area might get pissed off if I say this, but just from my observation, like because in their areas, they are really good at naming those genealogy, right? I mean, you experienced that, right, Jay? Like
right.
With your
that is wife? True. And in fact, it'll take days to name it all. It'll take days to name all of that stories, and there are old folks there who are consistently chanting this whole story.
Yeah.
Wow.
To get to where you are now, and
right.
Yeah,
right.
It's pretty cool.
It is cool, man. It's like
this
whole journey from place to place to place to, like you said, to get where you are now.
But it's a powerful thing if you're the recipient of that, of you're participating in that process, that to hear those names, that you're linked to. If you, and for me now, knowing that I'm connected to not just me, my husband, my kids, that it goes on beyond us. That's what I want for my kids to remember, so that whenever they feel lost or depressed, that they remember that they're rooted in a culture that goes beyond, that transcends them, and that they should never really feel alone because they've come from step by step from beyond.
And I think that's part of the reason.
It's so powerful.
That's part of the reason in the old days, like most areas in the Philippines don't have that. It's only now that they have that word depression. But people didn't have that depression because a lot of the root of depression is feeling alone. And I think in the old days, people didn't have that necessarily because they never felt alone. They always definitely had and they had people around them everywhere, right? So
yeah, I mean, the isolation is it's so prevalent now, amongst our in Western culture,
and in our diaspora culture. Because we've moved out of that culture.
Yeah.
But you
I
know,
mean, if you look at people and how our families are, and there's a lot more brokenness in families already, and we live far apart from each other. So, like your tribe, your people, your family are much more split apart. It's not like you could some families they live cross country or they live cross nation now, where it's just you feel a lot more isolated in it. But the other thing is like the breakdown of family structures too. I mean, if you look at our people and look at like the young Igorot folks and they're not married yet, I mean, that also means that in some ways they're not building up yet their families. So then who do you have around you? It's good to have your friends, but there's something where you don't have that intimacy. Um, that you don't that's different than when you have your own family, that closeness. People could have friends all over the place, but if you look at it, like a lot of your young adults, they're in their 30s now, and they don't have not yet started their families. And so this is not just Igorot people. This is like people all over the place, because the issue is like in Japan, where you got literally people never marrying at all now. And what that means is that they might not have like the young ones and the whole family structure when they get older themselves. And this is happening in first world westernized countries all over the place, where that there's a deep feeling of loneliness. And we will see it in 30 years when people don't have those kind of attachments, or don't have the kids that bring you that connection. Or and it's already very true, like if you look at Chinese culture, with the one kid kind of thing. That has definitely created a culture where there's all of a sudden you're gonna have a whole lot of single folks, because all the girls went somewhere else, and all the guys who there's not enough partners to have. um and so yeah, I think you see that everywhere. There's definitely this whole idea of loneliness, and you got to build up your what your family will look like. And it doesn't matter what your orientation will be, but you do got to build up what your family will look like. And that's people's challenge all over the place.
That's why I think for the I think why in our diaspora the Igorot, the IICs, and the family reunions now.
Yeah.
So why there's so much why that is so important for us. Because then that reminds us, wherever we are, in different countries, different places, wherever, when we come together every 4 years, every 2 years, every 1 year, whatever it is,
or even your local BBAC organization,
coming together with them every season or every year, just keeps you connected.
Yeah, and I think if you do have kids, you got to keep them exposed. I think to some degree, within whatever time you can do it. Edel, I know you're single. I mean, like, what's your thought on this? So, like,
on kids.
Well, just like the family experience at your age, and so, like,
well, I can only base it from my experience, because like I feel that like I've mentioned my journey in previous episodes, whatever, but I felt that during my time of not being close to like family, when I was trying to explore myself, especially in my late teens and early 20s, mid 20s, and throughout my 20s actually, where it's like I'm just trying to figure myself out or whatever. And I realized, looking back at that time, is the fact that during that time of like self-exploration or whatever, I didn't really connect as much to my family, especially like my immediate and like my cousins in the States or whatever, because those are the closest family I have, or my cousins here. I have cousins in Vancouver. Like I was never very close to them and whatever, and I felt that there is that sense of isolation and whatnot. And even going further back from that, when I was way more active in BBAC and active in church and whatever, when I would be hanging out with Gerald and stuff, that's when things were mentally much healthier compared to like when I again when I be rebellious and try to find myself, whatever. And I feel that if I were to have engaged myself more closer to other Igorots, especially, I feel that I'd have a much greater and stronger connection, not only to like other people, but also to myself and my identity, because I would feel like I would be more, I'd be more sympathetic, and I'd be much closer to people who are closer to who I am, rather than me trying to like look for myself in other people that are different from me. And I like from my personal experience, I've benefited from trying to go out and explore, and that's how I feel like I've grown to have a way more open-minded mind, even though whatever. There is some benefit from that. But I also learned and realized that there are some caveats to it, where sure, I can say that I'm a free thinking individual, but at the same time too, there are some things that I'm lacking, which I can say is like spirituality, and the fact that the lack of spirituality for me is also a loss of, when it comes to trying to be closer to my parents, where they're very spiritual and they're very like very into to that side of like life or whatever, where for me it's like all just secularism. But that's just from my experience. And again, I feel that if I were to raise kids, I would try to incorporate a lot of connections with Gerald, Uncle Gerald, and his kids, and your guys' too, because like the most I've felt happy and content was definitely after IIC, or that time, because around that period in my like late 20s, I just had come back from Peru, which was like my second finding myself trip or whatever. I left my job there, and I was like, okay, I'm done with Peru, I'm done with traveling, let's get back to work. And so for that year I started working. I was like, okay, let's do what I'm really excited about, which was like photography and stuff. This is when I started connecting more with Gerald. And then right in the middle of the year, when we were planning to go to IIC, that's when I was like, oh, getting all excited and whatnot. I was like, okay, IIC, that's pretty cool. And then basically after IIC, that's when I started making connections with other people in Diaspora. Like-minded people like yourselves, people in my generation, my age and whatnot, and who have that kinship, as opposed to me having to, go back to my old friends, where it's like, okay, even though you guys are the people that I kind of grew up with, I still have to try to reconnect with you guys, because we've grown apart and whatnot. So it was really cool to be part of that community of IIC and with you guys. And I think that's the biggest thing. If I were to have a kid, that's the biggest lesson I would try to like share to them, or try to get them to learn. Is that be yourself, do yourself. You be, at the same time, like learn from your parents, my parents, I mean, like learn from them, because there's a lot of lessons that I've learned indirectly, because I've always tried to like be far from my parents, but now it's just like, man, I missed so much, you know what I mean? So it's important to have that connection with other people that are similar to yourself.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Cool. It was like a big IIC commercial or something like that.
But it's true though. But the IIC, isn't it crazy that we could all be in different, we were all raised in different areas of the world, all of us. But we share that same indigenous connection, that when we're all together in an IIC, it's like we've known each other forever. Exactly. We don't even need to like, oh, where are you? It's like there's that connection that it's unspoken. Like we just know, we feel like family. It's like family, even, it's weird. Great.
Breath of fresh air is like the thing I would describe it as.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, the IIC's
special.
Yeah, they're special, definitely. And hopefully folks who are on the fringe or something like that, who aren't part of it, Igorot organization can, be open to maybe trying to join in, and maybe their exposure can help those who are already in IIC to open their minds, So, yeah. I mean, we're a product. Our marriage is a product of IIC, so
it's because of the IIC. That's why we're together. It's true. We met in the IIC.
So, we can't deny that one.
It's true. It's totally true.
But I think that very much like the capacity for people to create family is key here.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you find yourself isolated, then that's not a healthy thing. And that we already have a connection through our cultural family,
right,
through our ethnic family, our indigenous family, that allows this feeling of togetherness.
I
remember how Grandma Rosalia would talk about.
That's our grandma, by the way.
She would speak in these rhymes, always talking about togetherness, especially when she was old, and those are the songs that she could remember when she was Kabao. So she
forgetting things. She was forgetting things.
And but those are the things that she remembered, was songs that speak about togetherness, and those are absolutely still very important for us, especially nowadays, especially being in this diaspora. So I think the encouragement really is to be able to create family, because and it speaks in a very diverse way of how that comes together. You have to create it. You do have to spend some time and energy investing into that aspect of who we are. Or else, I think that Italy, you said it there was almost as if there was like an incompleteness, and so you had to go on the journey again to go find what that wholeness is. And so there are places to return to, which is really encouraging, though. And I think that the IIC is one of them. Where's the next IIC? Can you all tell me?
New Zealand.
New Zealand. All right.
That's
so
cool. We're getting. What year is that now? 2020.
Didn't it get pushed back?
Did it supposed to be next year, man? Oh man.
It didn't get pushed back because of this COVID stuff.
I don't know.
2022.
Okay.
2022. It's supposed to be 2022. Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't 2021. Okay.
No.
Okay, it should be. I think we should be all right by then.
Should be fine.
Yeah, we'll be okay.
I hope.
Vaccine's coming next year, dude.
Yeah, but it has to go around the world. That's gonna take.
Has to get past the conspiracy theories too. So
yeah, and you still gotta test it out, because if baldness is one of them, or whatever.
I'll take baldness. I'd take a third foot. With this, we need.
A third foot.
I'm a vaccinator. I work in this thing, and it's like.
Well, you guys are gonna get it first, right? Because you guys have the care facility, so you guys would probably get it, because you guys like.
Only reason really why, because I'm really quite anti-vaccine before all of this shit, but because my neck is on the line for all of these residents that I'm
not anti-vaccine, just.
Yeah, well, just
it depends on the type of vaccine.
Sorry,
yeah.
We do vaccinate, but yeah, it depends on the vaccine. But yeah, the reason why I'm so like pro it at this point is because everything that I'm doing right now, my neck is on the line for all of it. If anybody, so all my residents are locked in at the moment.
So wait, before you even get into that, why don't you go into this? Because now she is an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I think we were talking about business.
Yeah.
Oh, so okay? Can you talk about the process of like passing the torch, of how your parents passed on the torch of responsibility to you?
So it's funny. My parents never said, "Okay, we're doing this business, and you're going to be running it next."
And there's two businesses, right?
They did it in a very passive-aggressive way,
which is our way. This is the way.
The Filipino way, actually. That. They never said to us, the only thing they said to us, you're going to go to finish education. You have to finish your education. after your education and you get married, you can do what you want. That's what they always said. Now, with the business, they never said, oh, you know, we're having this business so you can do it. They never said that. Just, I guess they just expected that to happen. But when they knew that when they knew that Ingrid and myself, we were like, we're never going to do this. We're never going to do this. As kids, you know, we were like, oh, we're never going to do this. We're going to do our own thing, you know. So we both became lawyers. We both went and did. We worked so I went to the States. I worked for a Fortune 500 company. You know, I did all of the things I wanted to do. So I did all of that. It was only when my parents decided that they were going to retire. Now, my mum, I always thought in my mind, this woman will just carry this on forever. Like, I never really took a thought that, oh, she's really going to give this up. Like, she's not going to do this. And she said, you know, it's up to you. It was at a juncture when we just had Penny in the States. It was a time when I was having to step back from my job because I was pregnant. You know, I couldn't physically go into work. But I knew that if I took that time off, because of the industry that I was in, it was so competitive. If I took that time off, the next youngest, brightest person on the block would be in, and I wouldn't be able to get back at the same level that I was at. I'd have to go somewhere else. So that was an eye opener for me.
Which, in essence, I think she was a little wrong on that, because they ended up hiring 7 people to take over one job of hers. She was doing that much work at this company that they had to hire 7 people to replace her. So,
but at the time, so the story goes, at the time, my mom was saying, you know, she was retiring in the UK. She said,
I'm just talking about how hard a worker you were, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
And then mom said, you know, it's up to you guys what you want to do, but I'm going to sell. I've got a buyer here. She had a buyer for the care home with one of her colleagues. Yeah. And I just thought, you know what? Like, she's really good. If she really sells that, like, that's the inheritance right there. That'll be gone, you know, and she worked so hard for that. And I didn't feel that point, I wasn't ready to just let that go. So we decided, you know, let's just give it a shot. Let's see what would happen. And we're here in the UK at the moment. That's what we did. And but yeah, they never said, oh, at the very beginning, oh, we're going to have this so you could do this. No, it was all, you know, they just assumed. That's another trait of the Filipino. There's a whole bunch of assumption and passive aggressiveness that the child then just does it, you know, in the end. But it makes sense. I realize, you know, there's a lot of young people that want to have a business. There are a lot of young people that would give anything to start a business. And here I am with this business that I'm just going to just close my eyes and just give it up. Like, no, we're going to try it. We'll try it out.
What were you doing at that time before you took over?
I was working for a semiconductor company in Silicon Valley. It was in the trademark department. Yeah. Like doing trademark law, approving trademarks, getting trademarks approved, getting them registered, and then a lot of like promotions, like marketing promos, ad campaigns, doing that. It was really fun. SanDisk.
Really?
Yeah. They're bought by Western Digital now. They were bought by Western after I left. Right.
But they were the big shots, right?
They were really, really big.
That's what I'm using. Yeah.
Hey, there we go.
Look at that SanDisk right there. Look at that.
Yay.
Yeah. And then when you open up that paper, you
that
know,
was
that piece of paper that falls out.
That was me.
Her department with all that legal stuff.
All that legal crap that was on there. And we were always being challenged every single time by the marketing department to get rid of all the legal. So all this stuff. Marketeers don't want anything. They just want clean lines. They don't want any disclosures. They don't even want the little artic. They don't want any of that. So that was the tension. We were always working in the environment that, you know, getting pushback from everyone. But it was just to keep everyone.
You were a paralegal?
Yeah, I was working as a paralegal. Yeah, I was because
and at the same time studying for the bar because she's a lawyer in England, but then you know you have to take the bar again when you come to the States. Yeah. I wasn't
successful. I failed multiple times actually. It was really, really tough. the California bar was. I wish I had more time because it's really an exam that you really need to like.
You need like 3 months at least minimum
to really
right?
just sit there and do it every day. But I was working at the same time, and it was
hard.
It was tough.
Wow. It was tough for you.
It was tough.
It was tough for you.
Yeah.
Actually, the statistic goes with like. I was reading somewhere, or like, especially with female lawyers, when it comes time to like have the baby, or around the 30s, that's when a lot of female lawyers leave the profession because they're gonna choose their families, or you go all in with the career, but then you don't have family.
You don't have family,
you know. So then it's a hard thing when someone has both, because then. Sometimes there's a professional jealousy that happens in that whole thing. So,
that's
but
the primary factor for the whole, what's it called? The equal pay issue.
Yeah.
That's the biggest factor. The fact that
because men don't have to go off. They never have to stop. They don't have to stop for 9 months.
Because like legally, they're equally paid.
Absolutely.
There should be no instance of where a woman should be paid less. But taking into the account of those factors wherein
they have
a lot
to
of
take off the time.
females not only taking the time off, but the fact that they sometimes do choose to leave the field. That's the reason why.
Well, in terms of the statistics and the numbers.
Overall.
We'll never get to come back. We get.
So. Let's bring it back to your taking over the family business and how has it changed from your parents' style to you now being the on-site CEO?
Yeah, before we even get into that, because I want to make it a little bit clear, just like from my perspective as the husband, because I think it would be easy for people to kind of say, oh, she's so lucky. She already had a business already there and she just took it over and stuff like that, right? But I think it was almost like, this is just from from her being her partner, it was almost like she had to create a new business, even though there was one existing, because there was transitions that were happening that her mother, that was the reason why she wanted to get out, because they were trying to put regulations on everything that her mother just couldn't handle. You know what I mean? Because it was
didn't want to handle. Didn't want to handle
because it was extra stress. You gotta you have to like learn a whole new process. You have to make new connections. You have to you have to learn how to use the computer.
So the business was being regulated by the government then.
Yeah. So it was like
it was always at that point. My mom had been regulated very carefully, but the added oversight and regulation that was coming in was just too burdensome. And my mom at that point, and a lot of people in her generation just said, no, you know what? I've worked 30 years in this gig and I'm not going to learn another, set of policies, another set of, of the computer and all this other stuff. And she transitioned her way out at the right time. So we did have to start again. Yeah. It wasn't like starting in, we still had residents there, but
they had the actual property and the former clients or the clients that my mother-in-law had. So that, I would say that's the main thing that they had.
But then all of the, the systems, the processes, all of that had to, those had to be, it's still care, but paperwork wise it was completely different. We had to
all the logistics is different.
It was different.
So sometimes people wonder like how they might question like my mother-in-law and ask her like, how come you didn't do the things that Wendy's doing now? And it was just, that was a different time. The things that my mother-in-law went through were built on certain relationships that no longer existed because of the new changes. So sorry, I'm.
No, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Because she's gonna be humble about it, but I just want to express it a little bit because I know it's easy for people to just think that Wendy's just taking over her mom's business and that's it, but it's not like that,
Yeah, we had to really build up a whole. Yeah, had to re-network with everything. All the departments changed. All of the ways that you get new clients changed. All the ways that you documented things changed. Everything pretty much has changed. Even from the time when I took it over, we've revamped. We've had to redo things as new developments come in, new changes come in, new policies, new everything comes in. We have to change up again. Same care, but the format of how you present that has changed. So yeah, I mean, it's different. It's a lot of work. I mean, don't get me wrong, we do a lot of work, but you know, we wouldn't be doing it if we didn't care. So, you know, we're still here. And it is a privilege. It is an absolute privilege to be working with people that, or knowing that you are having a direct impact in someone's life. You know, that is, you know, that's what keeps us still doing what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Particularly.
Nice. Sorry, I don't know what I missed there.
Okay.
But did we talk about the Dawak yet, or not yet?
No.
Oh, we haven't. We were talking about the
just the
kind of like
business.
the change between the changing of the guard between the mom and the daughter in terms of like Wendy.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So my wife taking over the business, and
right.
you know, and what was that process like? Because I think a lot of folks, you know, who want to run a business, kind of, you know, we talked about taking certain risks. Well, even taking over your mom's business is a risk.
It's even more of a risk because you know it's a business that's been successful. You're coming in, and if it's on you not to F it up, basically. At least if you started your own, you could say, oh, you know, I tried it and it didn't work, you know?
Yeah.
It's never been done before. Oh, no, she's had it for 30 years, you know, what could possibly go wrong, you know? Yeah. And then you come in and there's that extra pressure that you really can't mess this up. Really, really can't mess this up if you want to create any kind of legacy for your kids or your family. But I didn't let any of that hold us back. We just kept going, you know, we just take each thing at a time. I mean, a lot of the skills that I learned in law was transferable into the stuff that, you know, into the policies that we have to develop here. So a lot of it was very transferable.
And did we clearly mention that you're a care home manager, right?
Oh, so I manage.
We didn't mention that.
I manage a care home for people with mental health. So some of my clients most of them have schizophrenia, have lived with schizophrenia most of their adult life. Dementia. Mm-hmm. Now that they're getting older, they have onset of dementia. I have some clients with dementia. So yeah, it's a whole mixed bag. And I'm not a nursing home, so we don't do any nursing care. It's residential, so it's the part before they get to needing the nursing intervention. So we just support them with their daily activities, their daily lives, because they can't live on their own.
Yeah. Right. Still pretty challenging though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think I could stay on for much longer, but yeah, I just want to get to the Dawak and get you guys to share your experiences with that and your understanding of what you know, what entails a Dawak, like a full Dawak, and what actually happens throughout all of it.
So there's our Dawak was right. seven
it was way days. Back in 2004 in December, and it was, you know, tickets are cheaper at that time. We had our normal wedding in not our normal wedding, I want to say normal, but we had our Christian wedding, or the other style of wedding in the States in San Francisco in September. So the idea was that you know, we'd go back to the Philippines in December because the timing was right. And
we'd have all families
to have all the families kind of come in because tickets were a little bit cheaper at that time period. So when we first got there, they were already starting the rituals. We were actually a little bit late coming from Manila and from the airport, and they were already starting the prayers.
The total time of the whole Dawak proceeding was probably about 10 days. Yeah. Our time together in the Philippines doing what we needed to do was 7 days. But 3 days before that, my parents and the old folks had already started
the praying
rituals, and it's based as what Mark had mentioned. It's based on omens, so the old people will decide, okay, now is the time to start the first butchering of the first chicken or the first whatever thing, and the whole run up to it is sacrifice. So we're doing a lot of sacrificing of animals to cleanse the air, to cleanse the ceremony, to cleanse ourselves, to cleanse the family, to cleanse everybody that's going to be part of the ritual. Because when we do the actual ceremony of getting married, I guess in the indigenous way, everything has to be clean.
Yeah, a lot of it, the first half is about cleansing the body. So which is why cleansing everything, that's why you fast. So the fasting aspect, this is funny because no one really said it when we got there originally. And then we were like, hey, where's the food? And they're like, you're not supposed to be eating. And we were just sitting there like,
what?
Man. They did it straight Filipino style.
At that time,
they did it Filipino style. They kind of just told us to go there. We knew it was going to happen, and we wanted to do it.
Just follow,
Yeah, just follow. No one kind of gave us the heads up. And then, the next thing you do, we realized is like, oh man, you're supposed to fast. You can eat a little bit at night, but you can't, especially you're not supposed to eat in front of people until the gongs have broke. So like that first 3-4 days was like all prayer. We sit there with the old
24
people.
hours, like they would pray.
Yes.
Like when we got there,
24 hours.
24 hours. So people would take it in turns. The old people would take it in turns to pray. So the first batch of people will be up there
shifts
praying. The others will be sleeping. Then when they wake up, the other ones come in to pray.
And what happens is my parents and her parents have to be there
as witness
throughout the whole thing if they can. You know what I mean? And if they can't, then they have to have a stand-in. So they have a stand-in or something like that.
Or somebody comes in.
And when we have to sleep, there's also a stand-in as well for the families. So we had stand-ins from our family.
Just constantly in the area. So the area would be like in the compound, in the garden area, wherever the center of these rituals were taking place. It would be the whole.
Which would be the hut, the hut that was built for you. So traditionally in the old days, they would build you a hut. For you and your family. The community would help build this hut. And in that hut, as you guys first start the rituals, is where that's going to be yours. So all the prayers have to be in there.
So they're cleansing that hut, they're cleansing your house, they're
cleansing the whole
area, perimeter around it. They're cleansing all the people that come in to give you the prayers. It's a whole community being through this whole ritual that has to be cleansed and prayed for, to give you then the blessing of the prayers that they're giving.
Yeah. So from there, when we got there, it was tough, man, because the jet lag was rough. And we were sitting, plus like you can maybe, for me, I could probably understand maybe like a third of what was being said. It was challenging. So you're sleepy, trying to understand what's going on, looking for who can help you translate. And that was tough. But the one thing at that time, because you know what, there was nobody who had done this at the time, like from our generation, second generations. No one had done this from probably because of money, and I don't know, people maybe
time.
Time.
It takes a long time.
It takes a lot of time and resources to do it.
Sit there for a whole week, 10 days. Like, who's got 10 days? Who's even got a day?
Yeah. But our families were really intentional about it, especially when they started the family who could get the right resources to make this happen. And so like originally when that was supposed to happen, BBC was actually supposed to be out there. BBC was supposed to document the whole process. But,
really?
Yeah. But because they backed out last minute, because what happened was there was like a whole bunch of like reporters who were getting kidnapped at that time, from like Abu Sayyaf and stuff. So like they got
was a big deal
scared and they
also the tsunami had just happened.
Oh, the tsunami happened at that time too.
Oh, that's right.
That was that massive tsunami.
So there was a lot. The death toll was high, and kidnapping danger was high, and so they didn't, But we did have some people who did record. We had the pay out of pocket for that one. And but at least we have some. It's on VHS tape. At least we have something.
I remember the main ritual before the day of when we were, when we dressed up and we had, the community gathering. The most important, the sacred part was the night before. So where they were praying, they had been praying now for 4 or 5 days already. 3 days. And they butchered that was
3 days after we came, right?
3 days after we came.
3 days after.
So they then butchered the chicken. So the chicken, they always, whenever they butcher the chicken, they're looking for the bile of the chicken.
Yeah.
To see how healthy that is.
Yeah, and gallbladder.
The gallbladder, whichever. So that was the one that we were all like, oh, what does it say? What does it say? Good, it's good. And they were like, oh yeah, it's good. That was the only thing that I was like, okay, good. The rest of it's fine, whatever now,
But there was a lot of, I can't remember the numbers, but it was a lot. I mean, like in terms of chicken, we're talking like in the hundreds that were, in the hundreds. And then pigs, that was
about 50 pigs.
I thought there was like 17, at least I remember seeing 17 carabao heads. There were 17 carabao heads that they had lined up. And then like
because then after, because all that meat,
so I guess
is then given away. See, that's your.
It's all recorded in Auntie Karadan's book.
Yeah,
so if you want to get the actual details,
because I took a photo of that, and I think it's 9. Yeah, I think it's 9.
I remember
it's still a lot of meat. That's a heck of a lot of meat. So I mean,
they butcher all of that, and that's what you give out as your giveaway on the day of. When you receive your guests,
and that's like throughout the whole week after the gongs. So like, let's say it was about the 3rd day after we had gotten there, and that's when the big community thing happens, right? And so in the community thing, it's this typical Filipino wedding where we sit over there and next to your house, and then people are coming by and they'll do like presentations and stuff, and then they'll give you some type of gift, and then they drink with you. So and then they have some type of drink, and then like
that's the first
after they do certain rituals, then they break the gongs, and then there is no gong playing before that. I don't know in other areas, but where we're from, there is no gong playing
until that point.
And
then after that point, then gong playing throughout the next 3 days. It doesn't stop. It's constant. You can hear it consistently throughout the next few days, and it can't stop. I think there's you have to
you hear it night and day.
You have to hear it throughout. It has to ring throughout until the old people then say no, he stops now. So so all the markers there is when the old people are saying, okay, now we stop. Now the next thing to do. It's all guided by them. That's why you could, whenever we would ask, when are we going to do this? Everyone's saying, well, I don't know. Nobody knows. I don't know.
It's always dependent on the omens of the old people.
But it's all the old people that will be.
But all the butchering isn't just to randomly butcher. There was a lot. It was because it's part of the ritual, the sacrifice, and it's dependent on the amount of people who are coming in to your celebration. So you always have to feed the people who come. And this is general with all Filipinos, right? But it's definitely if you're doing the Dawak, you have to be prepared to feed those people along with the rituals. And so the gift, it's not like like in the States, so do we give like a nice thing for people to take home, that maybe a keychain that has like your name, you and your wife, or your partner, that is, like just taking a picture, and you take that home, right?
A fridge magnet.
Yeah, a fridge magnet to take home. In where we're from, you take home a piece of meat, man.
Bags of meat.
Bags of meat that have been all butchered there. Carabao, pork, and chicken. And
it really was like that scene where remember in Mandalorian where they took home the crate dragon meat, and you literally have like plastic bag full of meat, and then you're just walking away with it.
Yeah, that same bag that you used for Coke back in the day. They fill the bag with Coke and you drink the straw. Instead it's with the meat inside. So, but then like a lot of people come by and they give you really like a lot of different gifts, and it was amazing, man. It was one. Yeah. We'll definitely never forget that. Jay was there, and so okay. You're saying that the number of the carabao was like 9, right?
I think it was 9. But definitely.
And how many pigs? I'm just curious.
Pigs, I think it was about 50.
Oh, that's like 50.
I remember seeing Auntie's book. Like that was ridiculous. That's when I was like,
yeah, it's 50, and then it's like a whole lot of chickens.
Okay, all right. Because I must have got my numbers confused because it's been like 15, 16 years now.
BBC should have been there.
Gerald, especially Gerald. You and Audrey also, when you went back to Philippines, you also did your Dawak too.
No, not really. It wasn't really a Dawak. It was just a celebration, let's say. Because I mean, there was I guess there was some praying, but it wasn't super traditional. Nothing like that. Like, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, amazing.
How long do you end up fasting?
It's about 3 or 4 days.
3 or 4 days,
yeah. Wow. So like,
we were super skinny at that time too. It was like that's the only time in my life
I was
I'll ever be like that. And then I look at those pictures and I think, who the hell were you? Like, don't even.
Yeah, I was definitely about 60 pounds lighter then. But
so for the gongs, was it just random people just continuously playing, like taking shifts?
The first round is all the elders,
all of the old people,
and it was the like one of the, because I got to play with them. I took the tail end. I remember that, and
it's not even here. It's not even us. It's like it's them. It's the older people, and then
I danced with the old people. I danced with the old people at the first round.
Okay,
and the way that they played, it was just like, man, when you dance with a bunch of people who like really, man, you could really feel the rhythm, and it's so right, it's so deep, and then just like everybody knows the movement, And
well, they're only going to put the best on first, aren't they?
Yeah, that was all the old people who've been doing it for years,
and then it's invited to everybody, the family members and everybody.
Yeah, to the rest of the family. I did dance the first round, but like maybe I wasn't supposed to. I'm not sure, but I just jumped in there because I was a little bit too excited. I saw them coming out there, so I'm just running. No one told me to go back.
Yeah.
So
if it was wrong, they would have told you to go back.
They would have said, "Oh," like when they told us not to eat, they were like, "What are you doing?" Like,
yeah, they would have told you to go back.
Stop eating.
It was wrong. So it must have been right.
I remember Wendy. She was just so like.
I was so pissed.
She was so like, she didn't have a clue, man. And she's like, "How come we don't got our food? Where's our
food?"
Because she thought by that time. So what happened is that we were fasting before that, but she thought at least by that time
we would eat.
We would be able to eat during the big celebration. But apparently, still then it wasn't.
You're not supposed to eat until everyone's eaten, or you're at the back and you're eating like not showing anyone. I was like,
so I would say it was by the 5th day.
And the Jews do that actually. The Jews, so you watch that.
Jewish people,
Jewish people, they don't eat in front of their guests. They go behind a door and they go behind a veil and they eat there.
Well, this is so okay. So then you have that big celebration. That's about day. I can't remember day 3 or 4. It's in her book, okay. But then they have this is funny. You might laugh, but there's a day of consummation.
Really, people are tracking that. They're tracking that.
Well, because that's when you can eat.
Oh, congratulations.
Once you can eat, you're allowed to eat, then that's when you can, do your thing. Because you've been through the whole process of cleansing your body and cleansing your souls, or whatever, what I mean? Like cleanse yourself through prayer. And then like once the consummation happens, then you can, apparently no one really said it, but then they implied it because they were laughing. And all they were telling us was, no control, okay? No control. Tonight, no control. No family planning. No family planning, no control. And we're like, what?
I remember when they were saying that. No control.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
And then you didn't understand it. And it's like, dude, come on, man. What do you think they're talking about? No control. Talking about birth control, dude.
No family planning, okay? No family planning. So they have a whole discussion and prayers around this. Because the idea is that, the more fertile you are and the more children you have, it's supposed to be more blessings. And this was definitely conferred by my grandmother, Rosalia, who's alive at that time, because all she ever talked about was like, don't worry about being married. Just have children. Just have children. She just wanted us to have children right away. because she said, because then that's when the blessings will come, you know. And so like the old folks were like reiterating that whole thing, at least at this time of the Dawak, they were already pushing that, you know. So it was like
funny.
It was funny. Yeah, it was kind of funny. But
that's awesome.
Then they do after that, around day 6, 7, they do other aspects of where I told you where I'm supposed to do that the ritual where I supposed to go out hunting and then like come back. You know, that's why, you know, you ever see that statue of the Igorot person with the deer on his back? That's the one where like he should be coming back from that ritual kind of, and then like you know, you're supposed to have the fire and everything. So the ritual that we did was at least to have the firewood to prepare. And so that's supposed to symbolize the fire of your marriage, you know, and you got to keep it burning. The light of your marriage has to keep on burning. So you have to put effort and work into that. And so that's what that symbolizes in the ritual. Before that, there was also the, it's the dowry, your family dowry.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember my parents, it was so funny because like my parents didn't know that was going to happen. And so like they like really said, okay, so what are you going to hand down to your children, right? So this is the day before we do that other ritual with the firewood, right? And then they have a whole thing where they grill the families to see what they're going to give the kids. And the idea of that is so that there's witnesses there, and then they can pray and rejoice about what's going to be handed down to the children in the marriage. So that was another aspect that happened. And I think it was it must have been
that
day
was
6.
the day 6, yeah, because then it's all different extended family members.
Then everybody else who couldn't make the main celebration, they start coming in.
Yeah, you see, that's why it carries on for so long too, because you're waiting for family members that are coming from far
away, to
come and visit as well.
And that's why you're not allowed to leave the compound area, because you can't leave, or else
the blessings you're gonna send your blessings.
You're gonna send your blessings out, And I think that's why the whole thing with the hunting as part of the ritual is at the very end, because that's when they allow the guy to go out and come back in.
So then what did mom and dad say? We will give him PlayStation 3 at that time, right? PlayStation 3.
They said they would give me my education. So at the time I was still finishing my my master's degree.
Ooh, that's good. Education.
So the education, and then of course there are other aspects that, you know, we don't need to talk about here. But I mean, like, so moving on from that. Any other questions about that part? I did want to talk about like you know, like what advice you'd have, Wendy, for like, because a lot of the reason why we've been asking people about their life choices and their careers is because if people haven't seen it within their community or within their family, most people really won't know that it's possible. You know, and it's one thing to see it from outside your culture, like somebody else, your neighbor, experiencing something, or a lifestyle choice, or a profession. But like when someone within your community is able to do it, like to be an entrepreneur, then it means something completely different. So your family being entrepreneurs, especially like, you know, your dad, we didn't even talk about the shipping business. So the dad's,
that'll be another time, right?
Probably be another time.
He has a shipping business, so
yeah.
Well, that came after the failure of one business, but he continued, he persevered, and he got another one. He got another one going. He didn't let the other, you know, the devastation of losing a business stop him from having another one.
Right. You think about like so many like families who have lost businesses now with this COVID thing and ongoing pandemic, especially if you're in the restaurant business. Man, it's pretty brutal. And just knowing that, and knowing that there's maybe there's always redemption in that. That's, I think, part of what I'm hearing in your family story.
Yeah, because I think that's a really important part that we kind of missed out, because
there's always hope.
Yeah, there's always hope. Yeah.
If you work hard and you have pure intention, and you have faith, because my dad's spirituality comes from his, from the rituals that he does, also from his faith as a Christian. My mom's faith as a Christian too, and as a, with the rituals that have been performed, there's that there is that hope and that faith in those prayers, that they meant something. Those prayers were done for you, because to keep you safe and healthy and successful, and you hold on to that when times are hard.
Yeah, I think that's an important element to share, especially about,
because it's not all, it wasn't all perfect. None of the success that my parents had was a straight road. There was huge challenge, huge sacrifice, huge failure, but they didn't let that stop them. They continued. And that's something that I think anyone who's struggling, anyone who's having a challenge can take something from that. Not to give up, to always have hope, to continue, persevere.
Yeah, I wish we had a little bit more time to share that story, because it's an amazing story. Especially where your dad and your mom both came from, and a lot of times when I do help out with the business, not as much right now because I have injuries, but when I was going out a lot, a lot of people would say, "Oh, your parents are rich. Your in-laws are rich," but they just don't understand, man, the grind that my in-laws had to go through, and not only that my in-laws, but the children right here, they just don't understand the grind, and to just even be prosperous.
We worked hard. We still work hard. We're still working. We're not, just sitting back. We work. That's what we do.
So I guess the message to all the younger folks out there who want to start a business,
you have to be working in something that you definitely, it's your passion. Definitely is, because to us it's work, but it's what we we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't believe in what we were doing. We didn't have passion for what we were doing. My dad had passion in the restaurant business. That's why he started that. Didn't work out, but then he had passion in his connecting families and wanting to be close to the Philippines and wanting to have that connection to the Philippines. So he found another business through shipping the balikbayan boxes. And so you've got, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be doing it in something that is the passion that you have first. That will keep you in the game, and then the money and the success, that's through hard work too. That all comes through the hard work, and not to be swayed when challenges arise, because they will. That line is not straight. There's going to be setbacks, there's going to be disappointments, but you have to be focused. You have to stay the course, have faith.
I think the foundation of it all is also having some type of deeper spiritual faith to practice, to
because
support
you'll never a lot of the logic, you'll defy logic if you're looking for that. There's something else that's out there. I can't really, that X factor, that faith, that spirituality, that really does.
Especially if you're going to take a big risk.
Definitely. Because logic will defy that. You'll think, the odds are against you. The odds that you will fail. The odds that this will happen to you if you do this. So you have to have a faith to continue. Stay focused with.
All right.
Right on.
All right. So before we conclude this, sorry, I'm just feeding the baby. So I'm not gonna turn the video on. But I was struggling to find a concluding question for today. But I think, I don't know, we were talking a lot, at least you, Wendy, you're talking a lot about your parents. At least we got you talking a lot about your parents. I think to everybody, what would be, say, the best lesson you've learned from your parent? or at least the most memorable one. I don't know who would like to start. I think Wendy, you've probably mentioned a few already, but
I'll go first. Definitely hard work, or just working hard, the grind. And I think, Wendy, you had great examples for it, and I'm pretty sure all of us can say the same thing. It's working hard, like no matter what. Because for me, like I personally can say that compared to my parents, personally, I haven't really worked hard compared to them. I've not worked hard at all, in my opinion. But another one would be saving money. That's like a big one.
Yeah, saving. Yeah.
Not spending on excess, just saving, because that's how my parents have this house and whatnot. One lesson I would like to tell my parents is just don't just save your money.
It's a little bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's a really strong thing that I can definitely say I learned from my parents is don't spend a lot.
Those are good lessons, though. Those are really good lessons. I think I'll speak, because I think my mom and dad would, especially my mom, would definitely say the same thing. Save your money. Save your money. You have to save your money. And she's always talking about like bank account, like, make sure you have bank account, and all this stuff. And so yeah, I think learning how to deal with your money is for me is ongoing, and an ongoing learning process. I think I've had better times, and I've had at times where I just, man, how come I didn't save when I needed to, that kind of thing. I think many of us can say that, I'm just, but I think the other thing too, when it comes to family, man, what I learned when it comes to my parents, when it comes to family, it's important to be open and teach them love. And this is not just my parents, but my grandparents. They're talking about the connection. They're always talking about the connection of family, but they're always saying, especially my grandma, she would say this, love each other because that's how we are. And, to me, I take that as love each other because that's your DNA. And that's what you want. That's what you want to share with your kids, so that they can be these people who can go out into the world and have that confidence and that courage to take on these risks, right? Is to really build that love between family, making sure that you have a strong foundation of love within yourself, so you take care of yourself. And I know that's kind of like a very general thing from my parents, but that's also, it sounds simple, but not always easy, especially when you're dealing with the challenges of the normal challenges of life, the ups and downs. How can you maintain like having that loving character between your partner or to your kids when they're like not listening to you, your kids are not listening to you, but you still want to you want to do that, but you don't, and you still have to just give that unconditional love to your partner, especially to your kids and to your partner, especially when you don't agree with certain things. And then that's just normal. And so those are I think that's the greatest thing that's come down the line, come down the pipe, And my dad doesn't even say it that much, but he shows it in different ways. And I think I've mentioned it before. The way he shows his love is through his expression in cooking. And so like, you show your love in the best way that you can, and the skill and tools that you can. But you better explain, especially if you can communicate with your kids, and especially in this younger generations, you should be able to express to your kids how you express. Because my dad was like a puzzle. I didn't get it.
My dad.
Yeah, and
they don't come with a manual. And our dads are different from, you know, my friends who were white or black. Their parents were different from our parents. So
the blacks and the whites folks, they're very open about, like,
they communicate really well with their kids. Like, but Filipinos, that my parents never did.
Especially
like,
the first and second generation.
They just assume, they just wanted us to, they just expected us to follow, just to do. Yeah. We had to learn a different kind of, like, how to figure out, oh God, shit, like, not to get them pissed.
To navigate.
And to just, you know, just figure that out. It's a different kind of skill set, dude. That is like the reconnaissance stuff.
To try and understand your parents. And that's if you're even willing to, because I've seen kids who just don't care. And they just totally have their relationship with their parents, whether they be adopted parents or not, you know what I mean? Or biological. Yeah. God, I've seen, like, the spectrum, and some can be really sad, you know, that they can't mend that connection. But I think one of the things, you know, being that we are an Igorot channel, is that, you know, this is when the Igorot values kind of come out. Yeah. You know. So you want to?
No, that's it.
No, just.
Well, you know, just the unconditional love, knowing how to, you know, because my parents were terrible communicators, and they still are with each other. I mean, I'll be very, very honest. They don't communicate well with each other, but they know each other so well. Their love is still unconditional. So they figured out a way that they show each other, they support each other in ways that they know how each other work. So that's a lesson that I.
Oh yeah. Yeah, your parents are definitely a great example of unconditional love. Because they're both so headstrong.
Definitely. Yeah.
Just so headstrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you love me the same way, right?
Of course. Unconditionally. Always.
Nice.
So I can buy another guitar? Or...
Not approved. Not
Gerald J.
You know, I think I learned from my parents that loyalty is something that they and trust is something that runs deep with them. And so those are things I appreciate in their relationship, because they are definitely not the same kind of personality, but but they do complement each other very well.
Yeah.
And so there's a deep trust in that.
That's right.
When usually my mom is speaking for my dad, you know, she interprets things for him. And then
he's the translator of the translation of the translation.
Yeah, she translates for him, and so my dad has to trust that, or he prefers that sometimes, because sometimes he could be misunderstood. Because my dad has only two tones; he's either happy or angry. So, you know, I mean, because of that, then he needs an interpreter.
Or at least he just sounds that way. He doesn't mean it is. He just sounds that way.
No, he sounds that way. He sounds that way because that's the kind of tones that he has.
Yeah.
And so there's my mom, who kind of like she interprets for him, but there's a deep trust that they have in their relationship that that's really quite nice, and that's part of the lastingness that they have with each other. And so those are things that I learned, and I think that and that I look for and that I long for. So yeah, I mean, those are things that I find that's important: the loyalty and the trust.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, it's already been said, but obviously work ethic is number one. Like, parents' work ethic is second to none. Mine, I don't even think comes close, but yeah, it's, I guess, something I strive to hit is the bar that they've set. But at the same time, just that like sense of leading by example, because like you've all said, their communication is lacking.
Yours too?
Is this an Igorot thing? Is this an Igorot thing? Like,
right? So, yeah, but they just, try to lead by example, and that's, sometimes that can be very effective. So, that's probably one of the biggest things. Yeah. Sorry, she's sleeping now, but I can't make this too long.
No, it's okay.
Thanks for sticking around, Joe.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
No, this is awesome. Thank you again, Wendy.
You guys. No, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like there's still so much more to talk about with you, but I'm sure. Well, hopefully you'll find some time. I know you're incredibly busy. But one of these days. We can get together and do a little talk. I feel like this has turned into like Torogi therapy instead of talk, but
we can all identify with each other in the stories that we tell to each other, all of us.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
Yeah, we did an episode with Arnold Basingat,
I know.
And it was very much like that. It was very cathartic in the sense that, like, so I think Idol used that word before, cathartic, like just that kind of like to talk. I mean, we're talking story here, but like
we all identify with.
We don't know who's watching, right? But potentially it's international, and so sharing your story is a big deal.
It's therapeutic. It does bring out.
Well, I guess I gotta work on that rebrand. Anyway.
Torogi therapy.
Torogi therapy, there you go.
All right. So for everybody that was able to join us, is watching now, or is watching or is listening to us on the podcast, thank you for joining and listening. And we'll see you in the next season.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.